to those at the end. But yeah, that'd be great. So my name is Georgina Nori. I'm the Early Careers Specialist here at Arcadis, and I look after the early careers journey. So that's from early as high school outreach and engagement through to undergraduates, cadetships, to graduates, both the recruitment and the development side as well. So I'll be talking to you a little bit about our grad program later on in the session. I'm also joined by David Raftery today, and he'll introduce himself shortly as well. And yeah, so we're very excited to have you here, and congratulations on making it through to this stage in our process. It's a huge achievement, so well done. But before we do begin, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the respective lands from which we all join the call today. For myself, I'm based in Melbourne, so that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Oh, sorry, I've gone back a slide. So today's agenda, it's pretty straightforward. David's going to take over from me shortly to give you an introduction to Arcadis. I'll then jump in to tell you a bit more about that grad program that we offer, and then again opening up to questions at the end. I will also be running through some next steps as far as the next stage in the process and letting you know about that as well. So I will now hand over to David, who is our Country Director for Australia and our Resilience Business Area. David, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Georgina. I've been desperately trying to admit people as you've been starting the call. So if you've seen me looking over here, I've been trying to hit the admit button, but I think there's a couple of stragglers coming in. So keep that rolling.
No worries. I'll monitor those while you talk.
Yeah, awesome. So the light is rubbish in this little meeting room where I'm in, but I'm in our super fancy new offices in Queen and Collins in Melbourne. So Woman Jika in the Woiwurrung language, that means welcome, and Woman Jika also means come with purpose. And so I'm sure you've all come to this meeting with purpose, which is awesome. Thanks for giving us a bit of time, and well done on getting to this stage in the journey as well. Before we get into the guts of some of the corporate info, I suppose it's always good to know a small little bit about the people who are doing the talking. So clearly by the accent, I'm not a native. I'm originally from Galway on the west coast of Ireland on the Atlantic seaboard. Been in Melbourne about 12 years, married with 3 daughters. So we're in year 12, year 11 and year 8. I'm having to do a bit of maths, chemistry. I'm dabbling in accounting, and I'm realizing that if I had to do the year 12 exams, I'd fail all of them. I joined Arcadis about 1.5 years ago. I came from Jacobs. Prior to that, I was with Golder Associates, and then I was with URS, which kind of morphed into ACOM. My background is in contaminated land and probably environmental risk management. So they're the 2 kind of technical areas that I kick around in. But I did a degree in manufacturing engineering, and in the 4th year, in the final year, I did a 5-hour open book exam to design a truck gearbox. And that was a pivotal moment where I realized that my maths really didn't stack up, but I managed to blag my way through to 4th year. And I realized that I needed a change, and I headed off and did a master's in environmental science. Yesterday was our Global Health and Safety Day. And as part of the presentation on Health and Safety Day, I shared a very important health and safety moment that I had very young in my career. But my first job was with a waste management company, and they brought me in to help them rewrite their policies and procedures. At least that's what they told me. But right down at the bottom of my CV at the time, which was a superb work of fiction, was the fact that I had a valid forklift driver's license, and I was actually hired because I had a valid forklift driver's license. And so I spent my first year driving a forklift, moving hazardous waste around a yard in a less than posh part of Dublin. So my journey has meandered through to this point. It's non-linear, and I wouldn't say it has been superbly planned. I've followed one foot in front of the other, but the two consistent things I think in my career journey is I've really aligned with values and culture, and I've really aligned with good people. And so technical is technical, projects are projects. Millions or billions of dollars of global revenue will always be millions or billions of dollars of global revenue. But the key thing that I always looked for was a pretty solid culture and good people. And two things for me around culture has always been, or motivators for me has always been humility and gratitude. And I think if I was to be slightly controversial for a second, the engineering and science consulting sector has in the past been driven by very large egos, predominantly male. And I really, that's not something that I socialize or celebrate at all. I run a mile from it. And so that, that concept of being humble in terms of your aptitude and your experience and your expertise is important. And just that simplicity around gratitude. And so in the consulting services area, we have to remain humble because we're only here because a client wants to pay us for an hour of our expertise. So that's a small little bit about me. Non-linear career path, have met some fantastic people, humble, gracious, and dying to pass on what I would call the craft of consulting. So you've all gone through your academic processes and your time, and you've clearly all been very successful in that regard. It's now about learning the craft of consulting, and more often than not, that's people skills, that's behaviors, that's attitudes. So it's almost another component of learning. The last thing that I'd say, because I know Georgina wants me to get through a ton of slides here, is I understand that the transfer of knowledge is now two-way. And by that statement, what I mean is that historically, the transfer of knowledge was from the older, wise engineers, you know, the people who had traditionally white beards because the gender balance was terrible, and they would pass on the knowledge to you. And now I totally understand that we learn a ton from yourselves. We learn that the diversity of thought is critical. We learn that there's way more than one learning style. And we learn that what we know as the traditional and effective channels of communication are actually not the traditional and effective channels of communication that you know, and you've been exposed to a whole range more than we have. So really, really important to know that that knowledge transfer goes both ways. Okay, let's kick on through a couple of slides. We'll rattle through them, and then I'll hang around and I'll talk a little bit at the Q&A as well. You're probably inundated with numbers at the minute, and I gave you a little hint at my slight weakness in maths, but a couple of numbers that kind of are important here. Globally, we're about 29,000. Now, that might sound absolutely bonkers to you, but based on the companies that I've worked in, I think we're mid-tier. And I really like the fact that we're mid-tier. The small businesses can be hugely beneficial, but sometimes the opportunities are limited in the smaller business. Where we are is just a lovely mid-pack size. And some of the larger businesses have got these crazy aspirations that they want to be the biggest based on headcount and gross revenue. And we don't want to be the biggest. We're very happy where we are. We want organic growth year on year, but we're not saying we want to be bigger than all the other consultancies that begin with an A. You can have a look at the headcount split on the right-hand side there on the bar chart. We're in about 30 countries. We've operated in 70 plus countries, and we have global excellence centers in India, the Philippines, and Romania at about 3,000 people. And to date, done about 35,000 projects, and that number rises all the time. Gives you a little idea of scale, and very important as well. If we could go to the next slide, Georgina, and thank you so much for changing the slides. This one is really important, and I'll tell you why this is important. I won't talk through all of the text, but this is around heritage. And one of the reasons that I came into the business was around heritage. And the heritage fundamentally goes back to 1888. But some of the roots of Hyder, which was the presence within Australia that I'll talk about in a second, goes back to 1739 as well. 1888 was a lot of the formation of the Arcadis in its original entity, and that was around restoration and regeneration of wastelands and wetlands in the Netherlands. And so our corporate headquarters is in the Netherlands. And I love the fact that it's actually European, because I've worked for North American headquartered companies for so long. So I really enjoy that part. You can read down through the list, but I think a couple of key dates in there. 1993, Geraghty and Miller acquired to get that big presence in North America. Introduction of the Arcadis brand in 1997. And the big one, of course, relevant here for all of us was 2014, when Arcadis acquired the Haider brand, and then in 2015 launched the Arcadis brand in Australia. So this year we've been thinking about the tremendous growth that we've had in the 7 years of being present in Australia, and really focusing on what the next 7 years look like. And the next 7 years is going to look different, and the change is going to be constant. And I think that a lot of the traditional aspects of consulting services will change. We're seeing those changes already in, let's pick on the legal sector for a second. The legal sector would have partners, and those partners would have their own individual brand. They would have their own individual sales targets, heavily leveraged off those sales targets. And the work traditionally came in the door, and then they would bill at an exorbitant charge out rate, which is what lawyers and partners do. And that's how the whole revenue model worked. All of a sudden, the consumer sentiment around using a lawyer is changing. And now the lawyers have to bid work, they have to write proposals, and they have to pitch and try to sell their work. So that concept of brand is becoming less and less. I think for us in consulting services, what the clients are going to expect is much more collaboration. So they see us as partners, they see us as part of their teams, and some of our commercial models and our attitudes towards the clients are going to change. So the next 7 years is very exciting. And we really want to continue that growth that we've had in the first 7 years of the Arcadis brand in Australia. We want to turbo that as well. Haider was a fantastic brand that we built upon to acquire to come into Australia. And we have tons of people that were in the Haider business that have stayed with us. And that is very telling, because after an acquisition, the normal pathway is that everybody leaves because they don't like who's acquired them. We have loads of people that have massive Haider legacies, 20 plus years of experience. And we love that fact, and we socialize and we celebrate it. So great legacy, really important that a business is built off a strong legacy, but evolving all of the time is what I would say. Okay, next slide. And Georgina, I'm doing terribly on schedule here, so I'm sorry, I'll speed it up. Every business has a purpose, and every business has a vision, and there's a load of statements that most businesses have. But if you go back to 1888, when we talked about one of the first jobs that we did, which was around restoration and regeneration of wetlands and wastelands, our purpose is to improve the quality of life. That is a very high level statement, right? That is a difficult one to achieve, but it is a good one to try to live by. So we're trying to improve the quality of life. And in many respects, if I was to describe us in a word or 2 words, or maybe 4 words, we're a tiny bit socialist. That's kind of what we are. We are a public company, and we're listed on the Dutch stock exchange, which I had to check out before I was considering joining the company, because I didn't realize that the Netherlands had a stock exchange. But we are good socialists at our core, and we absolutely love that fact, and we kind of socialize and celebrate that fact as well. So improving quality of life, that's our purpose. Okay, next slide. You can use the QR code to get into a Mentimeter. And Georgina, if everybody scans the code, we would love to hear what values are important to you. So let's throw up a couple of words. What are you looking for in terms of the values that are important to you and that you might look for in an employer as you join it as well? So that's a bit of homework for you to do while I keep prattling on here. How long should we give this slide?
1 second.
That's okay.
I'm
And the really great news is that somebody just came in and they scored some chocolate biscuits in the meeting room. So I've also got 2 Tim Tams that I might eat as well as I'm going along. There's no better biscuit than a chocolate biscuit from somebody else's meeting.
So I'm just going to pop up on the screen now the answers as they're popping up. So thanks everyone who has popped in those values that are important to you. It's great to see that the words that are the largest are the ones that people are saying the most. So it's moving very quickly.
Brilliant.
Some really great values in there: sustainability, integrity, collaboration.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've got to twist my head this way for a second to read some of these. Yeah.
You got to be quick. It moves very quickly.
There's some
it's good
great
to see digitalization as well in there.
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
big
there's
focus
some
for
great
us.
words. Ethics,
Mm-hmm.
empathy, team-based, reliability, mentorship, curious, lovely word. Respect, absolutely. Safety. Yeah, professionalism, Mohammed, yeah, just looking at the chat as well. Genuine people, you know, it has to be fun and it has to be safe. And safety for me is physical and psychological safety. And safety is also to be safe to be your genuine self at work. And so diversity for us is absolutely critical. And diversity is gender, race, color, creed, sexual orientation, all of those things. You have to bring your own genuine self to work every day. We can't be a work culture that prevents you from not being your genuine self. And we socialize and we celebrate the diversity that we have, and we're really very aware of that. Integrity, critical, right? Absolutely critical. We're humans joining a community, and any community that you kick around and you hang around in, you really want that to be underpinned by integrity. Your community that's family, your community that's your friendship groups, some of your peer groups, former college mates, former classmates, all those networks, you feel safe in those communities because they're underpinned by honesty and collaboration, but integrity is a big one as well. Feedback orientated, absolutely. Always challenging to deliver feedback well. Communication, open and honest. But one of the big ones there is sustainability. And I think that there's a seismic shift. No, you're okay. I remembered a few words, but I just wanted to hook in on sustainability for a second. I feel like we're just at a pivotal point in Australia. And the pivotal point is that consumer sentiment is gazumping state and federal performances around a sustainable future. So we're at this lovely point where people power is almost taken over. I'm not going to predict the next election. I'm frustrated at the fact that sustainability is being weaponized by the political parties. But for us, sustainability is beyond the environmental team, which I lead. It's actually sustainability in design, in our mobility and our places, buildings as well. So embedding that concept of sustainability in absolutely everything that we do. I walk past a billboard on the way to work, and I can't remember who it was, if it was Kathmandu or if it was Helly Hansen or Macpac, but they were advertising a down jacket that biodegraded in a landfill. And I was thinking to myself, now, first and foremost, we all need to kind of reduce the amount of consumption. So keep the jacket and wear it until there's loads of holes in it. But that's pretty cool that they're determining that a consumer motivation is to buy a jacket that's fully biodegradable within a landfill where all the aerobic and anaerobic digestion is correct, etc. But still, that goes to show you the shift in sentiment. And our clients are shifting faster than anybody in terms of sustainability being a value and a driver for them. So I'm not going to read off the slide, don't worry, but I think a lot of this we've actually covered. People first. We put people first because fundamentally we don't have assets. For anybody that has done a little bit of year 12 accounting, we don't have assets on the ledger, right? So our assets are people, it's yourselves. And we need to treat them with respect and dignity, inclusion, make sure that everybody feels welcomed. And if you want to nip out for a coffee at 11, you've got a buddy somewhere to go and have a coffee with. Client success, I talked a little bit about the services industry. Sometimes we can disappear in our own awesomeness, but you have to remember that we're no different than the person you bought the coffee from on your commute, or the sandwich, or any other service industry. You need to get that coffee or that sandwich, make it as best as you can, make it at a good price, provide a good customer service, and everybody comes back. Our clients are absolutely critical in this. We talked a lot about sustainability, and we talked a lot about integrity, and ultimately collaboration is vital. And I'll talk about the restructure that we went to recently to increase collaboration. So our behaviors are that we value each other, we really celebrate and embrace each other, we deliver on our promises. Sounds very simple, but at times can be hard to do, and sometimes we overpromise. We always bring our best. And I think in terms of bringing your best, that's bringing your best self to work, but it's also trying to be as positive and engaged as you can. There will be days where you won't be positive and engaged, and that's okay. I'm not looking for evangelical positivity, but I'm saying that you bring your best self to work. And we talked about collaboration, so we work as one team. We're about 1,300 in Australia, so we're not particularly big. We don't really pay much regard to geographies, and flexibility in terms of working remotely is now completely embedded. We don't even talk about it anymore. So that connection as one team is very important if you're working from home or you're in our office. And I think we want to be brave about the future. We want to do things a bit differently, and that's critical as well as a behavior. Okay, let's move on because I am doing terribly on time. We went through a global restructure, and the global restructure was underpinned by probably three things: a much greater focus on sustainable solutions, a much greater focus on digitization of almost everything. And look, I'm a middle-aged bloke, so I shouldn't really be talking about the word digital because I have nothing analog in my life. Do you know what I mean? I shouldn't even be like, why am I still using the word digital? It's kind of crazy. The only interesting thing I have on digital and analog, and I'll show my age, is I'm teaching two of my daughters how to drive. And I'm convincing them that it's not a digital instrument that they're working with, because they see everything in ones and zeros as binary. So we were using a manual Suzuki Swift, which is a highly analog device, and we're talking through the gearbox, and I realized, oh, well, there's a bit of analog in my life. So we need to digitize everything and automate everything. And then most importantly is focus and scale. And I hinted at this a little bit at the start, where I said, we don't want to be the biggest. And we want to be the best at things with a sense of humility, but we do not want to be the biggest. And we have to be aware of where are our strengths, who are our best clients, and what's our best service to provide. So we are not going to go out tomorrow and say we can build inland rail on our own, but we will partner with organizations. And lo and behold, we win the bid for design services for inland rail. So we are realistic and humble. So focus and scale is quite important for us. So they were the three big drivers for us to change our strategy. And I think if we go on to the next slide, and I'll just get rid of this guest in the lobby, we decided that the client demand was across four key pillars. Urbanisation. Now that is remarkably relevant for us in Australia because we're one of the most urbanised countries in the world. Climate change, which I think not dissimilar to digital, we shouldn't even really be talking about it, like it is here now, prevalent. And we are seeing an entire shift on hydrology modelling. So surface water and flood assessment modelling. All of the information we previously used is on its head. The frequency and the intensity of the weather events is changing day by day by day by day. There's a seasonal shift happening in Australia and globally. So climate change, we are driven by that from a client need perspective. Digitization, I've already talked about, and societal expectations. And that's quite important because if you just think locally within Australia for a second, there will be huge shifts in societal expectations. In my day, your first key metric for success was buying a car. Big bank loan, you buy the car. Couple of other, let's call it intermediate metrics for success, find a life partner, and the next one then was buying a house. Even bigger loan, buy the house. So you think you own two assets, but you're underpinned by a whole load of debt. I don't think that societal expectations in the future will be binary around those two things. And there'll be a whole range of other societal expectations around what equitable truly is. If you think about climate change and global resilience, fundamentally, the higher socioeconomic groups are the ones who will be best protected from a resilience perspective. And that's fundamentally not fair. So societal expectations will be a big driver for us. We took those 4 themes and then we decided that what we can do is we can change our business. Our business used to be based on geographies, and now our business is based around 3 business lines that everybody lines up with globally. Resilience, which just so happens to be what I lead in Australia, and that combines energy and resources supporting the energy transition, environment and waste management, and restoration, contaminated land assessment and investigation. So that's the resilience business. Places is fundamentally urban design, civil structural engineering, building design, planning, etc. And then mobility is all things transport. And I think we have an energy transition. Interestingly, we have a waste transition, which nobody has quite noticed because it doesn't win as many votes to talk about the waste transition, but we are shifting the way that we generate, treat and dispose of all wastes. And it's no longer okay to just use all of the wasteland to dig another landfill. That's not sustainable. And I think we're just on the cusp of a transport transition as well. A full embrace to public transport, a much greater celebration of the pedestrian and a much greater celebration of the humble bicycle. So that's how we shifted the entire structure of the business, was to be built around those 3 pillars: resilience, places and mobility. So we are agnostic to geography fundamentally. Our geographies are around those 3 businesses. And the key thing with those 3 businesses is that they collaborate in a kind of a single Arcadis approach, because the clients want us to hunt in packs. The clients want us to provide a combined service as well. So connectivity and interdependence across those 3 business areas is very, very important. Okay, Georgina, I am killing you time-wise, so I need to hurry up. Couple of very quick slides in terms of resilience. So it's about protecting the environment and the water. We're doing an awful lot in terms of energy transition internationally and locally. We have a huge environmental restoration business in the US, and we also have a growing restoration business in Australia. And one of the big things that's a success story for us in Australia is the shift away from PFAS. So PFAS is what's termed a forever chemical. We would call it an emerging contaminant of concern, an emerging COC. The other emerging COCs are all of the constituents that go into personal care products. In probably 5 to 7 years' time, all of the personal care products that's in our bathrooms, I would say half them won't be there, and I would say 4/5 of them will have very different chemical makeup, because we are increasingly aware of the toxicity of what we thought were passive chemicals. So that's resilience. I think the next one is places. So I think places for us is no longer about building a building. It's about building a sustainable community, and it's also about building buildings or communities or precincts where people really live, work, thrive, survive. So that concept of you live a long way away from where you shop, which is a long way away from where you have leisure activities, which is a long way away from where you work. They will all commingle much closer in the future, and that's what we're trying to do. So we've really embedded sustainability in some of the civil, structural and architectural design. We've started to look at the analytics that would support, the data analytics that would support urban design. And we've played that out at a sort of a precinct level in the UK. And we're also doing quite a bit in terms of cost and commercial management. So almost a traditional quantity surveying service area as well. And we're doing an awful lot of that in Australia and also Southeast Asia as well. Okay, last one. Big piece of the puzzle for us is around mobility. I talked about a little bit of a transport transition that we're under. So it's around mobility as a service. It's around probably the design aspects being led and much more heavily influenced by the commuter and the user, and really heavily led by data analytics around digitization as well. So the coexistence between mobility, places and resilience, that's the sweet spot. That is the perfect cup of coffee with the perfect almond croissant, with the perfect barista for the perfect price. That'll cause the client to come back the next morning. And if they disregard their health, say, yeah, another coffee, another almond, and another bit of a chit chat while I give you the good price to come back. So the coexistence of those is really important for us. Right, next slide. Look, we've been going for about 75 years through Hyder and through Arcadis, a couple of big projects in there, instrumental in Sydney Harbour Bridge, right? Have to go for the big high impact one as well. Lots of buildings and lots of roads, lots of rail as well. So really important to know that we're a high profile business and we're undertaking some of the really big mega projects that are being built at the minute. A mega project when I started out as a graduate was anything over £50,000 at the time. Then it became about €75,000. Then a mega project became anything over $500,000 or $1 million. Then a mega project became tens of millions. A mega project is now several billions. Crazy, right? But I'm getting old. Fair to say that we've got great coverage geographically. Fair to say that we've got great coverage across a range of projects. Georgina, I think we're coming to the end of my slide deck, are we? One more very important point. Our largest shareholder is the Loven Clan Foundation, and the Loven Clan Foundation is led by the employees of Arcadis. It's almost like a little self-protection mechanism to make sure that we continue to focus on people at the core of everything that we do. So the Loven Clan Foundation is quite unique in terms of publicly listed large-scale consultancies, and it's something that we really do celebrate as well. So there's a number of initiatives that I think are on the next slide, are they? Yeah, so look, a couple of ones there. Expedition DNA would be one to make sure that everybody is a digital native. So it's a quite intensive training course that we encourage everybody to go on, self-led. Shelter is a partnership between Arcadis and the UN Habitat, which is around improving the quality of life in rapidly growing cities. Imagine was basically around supporting, celebrating, and in turn commercializing innovation. And so if you think about the change is always underpinned by innovation as being a key success attribute. So Imagine is one of those. The Global City Shapers is basically connecting, I suppose, the futurist in you to other futurists around the globe when they think about what does the future of Melbourne look like. There was an article in the paper 2 days ago in Melbourne where it said, maybe we've got an opportunity to make the centre of Melbourne car free. All right, do you reckon? You know, we should have made the centre of Melbourne car free about 5 years ago. Melbourne Metro is an opportunity to close down those roads and manage the fact that transport needs to come through at certain hours, but really heavily invest in the pedestrian and the bike. So City and Global Shapers is a really nice one as well. Quest is that we support the movement of key technical expertise around the world. And then our Global Share Plan, we encourage everybody to buy a few shares and feel like you have an ownership in it and feel like it's a small little bit of the blood runs orange because that's our key colour. So Loven Clan runs all of these initiatives. And Loven Clan is a big part of our DNA and part of our identity as being a bit socialist, tiny bit left to centre, and really supporting that improving quality of life. Right. Awesome. I'm super sorry, Georgina. I stole a ton of time off you. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I'll be around for Q&A and I'll switch off the camera because I've got those 2 free chocolate Tim Tams that I'm dying to eat. So look forward to a few hard questions. Over to you, Georgina.
Awesome. Thanks, David. All right, then. So I'm just getting a little feedback on myself. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So yeah, thanks so much, David, for that great introduction to Arcadis. I hope you all enjoyed learning a bit more about us and our background. So now I'm going to take over and take you through a bit more information about our graduate program. And then lastly, talking a little bit about the next steps in the recruitment process. So firstly, looking at the overall picture of our graduate offerings. So when you join us as a graduate, we hire graduates across many different disciplines and backgrounds. So every graduate journey will be a bit different and unique depending on your team and your background. But what is consistent for all of our grads coming in is the offerings. So these opportunities that you can take advantage of coming in as a graduate. So on the slide here, I've got a few different main sectors. So the first sector there, so that's your wider learning and development opportunities. So David's already touched on some of these on the previous slide. So those are those initiatives that are run across Arcadis that anyone can get involved in, but we really encourage our graduates to get involved in as well. So I won't run through all of those again, but some really, really great initiatives. The symbol in the middle will be a new symbol. So that one is referring to Mentor Loop. So everyone at Arcadis can sign up for Mentor Loop. And as the name suggests, it's to do with mentoring. So it's a tool that we use to connect people. So when you join as a grad, we highly encourage you to do it. It's, again, an opt-in. You don't have to, but it's definitely a great opportunity. And it's essentially sort of like a matching system where you put in what you're looking for in a mentor and it matches you with someone in the business who suits that. And that could be someone outside of your business area, location, someone who's quite, I guess, separate from your immediate team and can give you that outsider perspective and offer you advice. So those are some of the wider learning opportunities. It's definitely not a definitive list. And one thing at Arcadis is week to week, there's all sorts of things going on. For instance, this week we had some really interesting health and safety events or sessions. We had a speaker come in yesterday. So there's always things happening, external people coming in and teaching us about different perspectives and ways to think. But those are some of, I guess, the key ones I wanted to highlight. And then next, I'll talk a little bit about our grad group initiatives. So each of our main offices have one or two grad leads for their office and a grad committee. And each year, the grad leads are elected. So we've just had an election. Our new grad leads started at the start of this month. And each year, these new grad leads come into the role and they really add their own, I guess, take on what they want to see for the grad group for the coming year. So that's in terms of networking, social events, learning opportunities, all sorts of things. So I've got some highlighted on the screen here. And it is really self-driven by graduates and they take a lot of feedback on and some really awesome initiatives that they pull together for that. Just a couple of things to highlight there. So they do a lunch and learn session once a month, and that's consistent across all the offices. And so, yeah, basically a speaker will come in from somewhere in the business. So you can learn on a subject or a topic that maybe you're not familiar with or from a different business area. And then just, get some nice snacks, some sandwiches or whatever's going on the day. And get another opportunity to network with your cohort. And then there is also volunteering opportunities, which the grad groups coordinate with, so beach cleans, that type of thing. And just another thing to mention is at Arcadis, you do get 1 day of paid volunteer leave a year as well. So you can use that for these sessions. They also coordinate site visits and organise tickets for external industry events. So a lot of cool initiatives run through the grad group. And then the last block or segment, I should say, at the bottom here. So that's your graduate development program. So there are a couple of key areas in the grad development program that I'll touch on. So we have an advocate partnership. So this is slightly different from the mentor loop, whereas this is purely for our grads and you're automatically assigned an advocate when you join us. And your advocate is someone who is within your area of the business, but not your team lead or manager. And this is someone who has the perspective of understanding your role and the challenges that you might face in that role and being able to support and offer you some, perspective a bit closer to the team. And they'll be able to help you with things like getting your chartership, and guiding you on where to go for rotations, and all that sort of thing. And so the rotations, I'll talk about them in a little bit more detail on another slide. Again, digital is a really big focus, and I know David's already sort of touched on this as well, but it is really important for us to embed digital early on for our graduates coming in. It is the way of the future, and really want to get those good habits starting early. And for all Arcadians, we want to be putting a digital lens on everything we do. And then the last tab there's that's the behavioural skills. And the next slide, which I will talk a bit more about those behavioural skills, but this is gives you a taster of what you might potentially expect as a graduate for your program. So this is what our current grads are on at the moment. And so they've already done a few sessions. They did their grad induction in February, which was a 3-day induction. And they've already completed a couple of webinar sessions, which are run through an external provider. So we do get the subject matter experts in to do these training sessions, these webinars. And then we've got some virtual workshops through the middle part of the year. And again, that digital focus at the end of the year, which will be in the form of workshop styles. So this is kind of the behavioural skills focus. The topics you'll see on here might not be your typical behavioural skills topics. And what happens in the grad induction is we actually put it to the grads on what they want to be, what topics that they want to learn about. So these topics were chosen by our grads, and it's again about giving our grads the autonomy to make those decisions and drive their development as well. And so, yeah, so that's sort of what our current grads are looking at. You've got down the bottom there, the grad rotations, the group events, and the wider development opportunities, which are running throughout the year as well, which are sort of opt-in opportunities. And while this is what's happening this year, it doesn't mean next year is going to be the same. We're constantly looking to get feedback on how we're doing, tweaking the program, developing it as we go. And so next year may look a bit different to this as we continue to develop and learn. So I thought I'd just illustrate the program, give a bit more colour by sharing some of the photos from 2021. So despite a year of strange lockdowns and all sorts of things, our grads still managed to make the best of it and put on some great events and get involved in some external events as well. I think we've got a Engineers Australia, looks a bit like a pub quiz, hard to tell from the picture, but in some sports related events. We've got a couple of online ones, some site visits, some really cool initiatives that the grads put on last year. So that's a little bit of a taster of what you could expect. And then moving on to the grad rotation program. So rotations, we've been doing those for a few years now. And for us, rotations make business sense. Not only is it a great opportunity for yourselves, so you get that opportunity to experience how another area of the business works, learn some new skills, build a network in other areas of the business, and explore career opportunities. It also means that you're going to be bringing back that knowledge to your original business unit, and will help us as a business to break down silos that do. Unfortunately, with larger businesses, it often happens where things can become siloed. So this is for us a great strategy to break down silos, build those networks between business areas, and really strengthen that network and collaboration. So the rotation program, so we are sort of reviewing and tweaking how that works. So at the moment, the way we have set that up is we have what we call core placements, which are the more long-term, so sort of around your 6-month mark, and they're your technical placements. So looking at a core placement, that would be something that's relevant to what you've studied. So civil engineering, you'd move into another team that also does civil engineering, but it could be in a different space. And then you have your elective rotations. So these are more experience-based rotations. So could be anything from sort of 2 weeks to maybe a month. And with a small elective rotation. These are sort of there to help give you context, a bit more understanding to, say, for example, you're wanting to understand more about contracts and how that works, and you could potentially get an elective placement with our finance team where you shadow that team and see how they work, and bring back that context to your projects and what you're working on in your home business unit. So that's just one example. There's plenty of other spaces you could potentially go into, and I'll run through some slides which will show you all the variety of areas that we work in. And the way it works as well, so you discuss with your line manager, what it is you're wanting out of your development plan, what's next for you, what skills do you need to develop, and that's when we would look at what areas make sense for you to move into, and what's going to make sense in your plan and your journey. And then we work together with myself and then the manager of the area you want to move into, and facilitating that transition. We're also hoping to introduce a bit more of a swap system as well. So that way we'd identify a graduate who is in the team that you're looking to move into, and hopefully matching them with your old team. So that way you'll have an opportunity to do some peer-to-peer support, ease that training a little bit, I guess work for your line managers, so that you guys can help each other out. Also a great learning opportunity as well. And I just wanted to emphasize that we are very flexible. So we want to do our best to support your career development within the means that we have. And we wouldn't want to force you into any sort of rotations or anything that you don't want to do. It is up to you what you want to do and to drive that. So yeah, it's not compulsory, although I highly recommend it, even if it's just a small elective placement. I think it'd be really beneficial for your development. So the next couple of slides, which are just sort of outlining those different areas that you could potentially look at. So talking through, as David mentioned, our 3 business units. So we have our resilience group, which is broken into those 3 top groups, and then down into the smaller teams. So there's a few, I won't read through all of them. So if you just want to have a look there, so a few different areas. So even if someone, say, has an environmental science background, there's a few different teams which would make sense for you to get exposure to through, say, a longer rotation. And then we also have our energy and resources group in there as well. And then moving on to our places group, again, broken into 4 main areas with the subgroups as well. So it's your building design, life cycle cost and business intelligence, urban development and regeneration, and technical advisory and delivery. And then mobility, again, our largest group, which is really focused on that connectivity and transport sector. Lots of little areas on the bottom there. Again, I won't go through all of them. But yeah, lots of different spaces which you could potentially rotate to or get exposure to. And lastly, because it can be overlooked, is our corporate services. So yeah, that's your legal, sales, marketing, finance, human resources, and IT. We'd always love to have a grad come join the HR team. So hopefully soon someone's going to be keen to get exposure to that. But yeah, there's other areas as well. Perhaps these would make a bit more sense for the elective rotations. But yeah, so a lot of opportunities and spaces you could look at. So that's basically the grad development offerings and the rotations in a snapshot. So we'll now quickly talk about next steps and then open up to questions. So in your email that you received with today's invitation, you should have also received a link to the experience session. So you would have either received the 3rd of May, 5th of May, or 9th of May. And the different dates are essentially the role that you've been put forward for is being reviewed on that date. So it's really challenging for us to change anything there. So if you are not available or if something comes up, please let me know as soon as possible. We will do our best to try and come up with an alternative arrangement, but unfortunately we can't guarantee that. And we'll just have to treat it on a case-by-case basis, but please do let us know. The experience session itself, so it's going to be broken into 2 parts. the first part being a group activity. And so you will be grouped in with another role. So it might be candidates with different backgrounds to yourself. We will work through a group task together. We'll then have a quick 10-minute break and then move into the second part of the event, which is the interviews and grad panel. So the interviews, we'll be having 20-minute interviews. And while you're waiting, if you're not in the first interview block, you'll be waiting with the grad Q&A panel in the main lobby. And this is going to have a few of our current grads. And it's really an opportunity for you to dig a bit deeper, see what it's actually like from our grads, get their perspective, grill them, ask them all sorts of questions about their experience, how it's been, their grad journey so far, you know, how they've found it with COVID and working at a new place. And yeah, so feel free to have some questions ready to go. And while you're waiting for that, and once you've done your interview, you'll be free to go after that. Or you can stick around and chat with those grads for longer if you like. So that's the format of the experience session. One other thing I'll mention is on the email invite we requested that you send through your academic transcript and your proof of work rights. So if you please send that through to the email address you received the invite from, and you can get that to us as soon as possible, that would be great. The session itself will be run on Zoom. So just making sure that you pre-download Zoom if you don't already have it, just to make things run a bit smoothly, and log in early, so 10 minutes early. Just making sure as well that you change your name to your first and last name, the same as how it's written on your application, so that we can sort you into the correct breakout rooms. And then following on from the experience sessions, we'll be running reference checks and then making offers and doing callbacks as well for candidates who were not successful. And I should mention as well, if you do get one of those callbacks, please don't be disheartened. We will likely keep you in a pool of candidates because we often have roles come up throughout the year. So please don't be disheartened by that. We will keep in touch with you and let you know of any opportunities that are suitable for you that come up later in the year. And we are aiming to get the offers heading out around the 16th to the 27th of May. This may blow out a little bit, so we will try our best to stick to that timeline, but just be wary it might be a little bit later than that. So that is everything I wanted to run through. Oh, one last thing actually I just wanted to say is there is no preparation that you need to do for the experience session. It is up to you how much prep you want to do for the interview portion, but the group activity, no prep required for that. The main thing I just wanted to say is try and have some fun with it. I know it can be really stressful doing these types of things, but we do want you to enjoy yourselves as much as possible, and you know, don't take everything too seriously. Just try your best to relax and enjoy the process. So that is everything that I wanted to run through with you. So I do have, sorry for those who don't have their phone with them, I do have one more QR code. This one is just for a survey to get your feedback on our recruitment process so far, and also to get your opinions on what it is you're looking for in a grad program. That will really help us shape how we do our next year in 2023. So if you can scan that and fill out the survey, you don't have to do it right now, but if you scan that QR code, it'll pop up the document. And I'll open up to questions now, and conscious of time at the moment, we've got 5 minutes. So if anyone has any burning questions, please feel free to take themselves off mute. I think we might have some in the chat as well, but I'll just pause for a minute to read through those. Edith, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just thought I'd ask if you can share a bit more about the grad rotation, because I know it's a 3-year grad program. So you mainly with the one team the whole time, and that core experience is a 6-month stint somewhere else?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So the way the program is set up is it's roughly between 2 to 3 years. So it's not a set 3-year program. And it is really based on the experience you bring into the role, your skill level as well, and whether your I guess your performance in the role. So it may be that you get to the end of 2 years and you're ready to move into that next level above grad. But for the rotations, so It is really flexible at the moment. So every grad is doing it slightly differently. So I'll probably be looking to add a little bit more structure into the program next year, just to make things run a bit more smoothly. But the idea is that you would do a 6-month rotation outside of your team, and then you'd come back to that team after the 6 months. So you could bring that knowledge back with you and share it with your team. So that is the idea. So you're hired into your core role in your group, and then you get this experience outside and you bring that back into the role.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Georgina.
No worries. Thanks, Edith. I see another hand up from, oh, sorry, I can't see your full name for some reason. Oh, there we go. Mohammed?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Just wanted to say, like, to both of you, David and Georgina, it's just amazing. I can't tell how much excited I am, like even being selected for all of this. The reason being because right down from the email that I received about the application process, they were like telling us what dates are and when we will be contacted and everything. This has never happened before. I've gone through many applications. I've like submitted numerous of them, and all of a sudden, sometimes it just come up with a random call, and I'm in the middle of something, and it's all in shadows, you know. And so I realized like how much Arcadis is actually community driven, just right off from there. And when David went on to explain how he regards humility and gratitude the most, I don't know, like I couldn't stop smiling at that point, because I was like reminded of the time when I used to be with my grandfather. He was a historian, and I used to sit down with him when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and he would like keep telling me about the stories about different lands, and he would just pass on the knowledge. And when David was telling me that, yeah, he's like so hyped up for, you know, transferring this knowledge, not saying that David is like a grandpa, but just saying that I was
far off the plate.
But yeah, just excited. I can't. The resonance is just spectacular of Arcadis throughout the entire process. I just can't wait for 5th May to.
Nice comments, Mohammed. Thanks for those. I'll go back to the comment I made that the people are fundamentally our only asset on our ledger, on our year 12 accounting ledger. And so if we're not looking after our people, we're not looking after our business. But yeah, no, nice comments. Thanks. We appreciate it, and we're trying to keep humble and grounded. And we appreciate that you've taken an interest in us and you've given us a bit of time as well. There is a question in there that I just tackle really quickly, conscious of time. So I wouldn't worry too much about imposter syndrome as a grad, right? I mean, you're coming into a really hot industry and hot market. And in many respects, your imposter syndrome should be almost lowest, which I know is counterintuitive, lowest on your start out in your career journey. You've got your academic success, you've put in the study and the hard yards. You'll have all worked on jobs through high school and through uni, and don't underestimate the importance of some of the jobs that you've worked in. And we love to see people that have worked in the services industry up to this point. And we love to see people who've done some tough jobs, because it's a solid grounding. So you're all well positioned and you're well qualified and you're all well able. Don't worry too much about that imposter syndrome. That bloody imposter syndrome grows over time. I need to be worried about imposter syndrome, not ye. Ye shouldn't be worrying too much about it at all. You're in a prime position. You're in a great space.
Awesome. Thanks, David. I'm afraid I hate to do this, but I actually have to jump on to another call. David, do you have a call straight after this as well?
I do, but just really quickly, I'm happy to stay on for a couple of minutes if there's any other comments, Georgina, if you want to bail. But I'm also happy to stay on for a few more minutes, because there's 1 or 2 other questions in the chat, so I could stay for about another 4 minutes, and I can just go through some of the chat comments as well, if that'd be useful. That
would be amazing. Thank you, David. I'm sorry I have to run off.
No, no,
thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
It's all my fault, because I talk too much.
I look forward to seeing you all at the experience days. So yeah, congrats again on making it to this stage, and thanks again for your time. See you, everyone.
Thanks, Georgina. So just really quickly, just going back to the comments around the rotation, we have to be, I don't want to be a complete killjoy or party pooper with the next comment, but if you're a aquatic ecologist or a terrestrial ecologist, we may not be able to put you into the bridges and structures team for 6 months, and vice versa. If you're a high-end structural engineer who's specialised in pile design, we may not put you into the geochemistry group around contaminated land. But there is movement within those core areas, and I know that might sound like I'm stating the bleeding obvious, but I just wanted to reiterate that one. If you like the sector and you're really passionate about it and you prefer it from the one that you came from, absolutely have the conversation with the line manager to see if we can transition that permanent move. Cross collaboration encouraged between teams. It's not encouraged, it's mandated in the most positive way, if you know what I mean, because we absolutely have to collaborate. Go back to the comment that the clients want us to kind of hunt in packs and come up with this combined service offering. It's also important that we learn from each other in the teams, which is really important as well. The other key thing to think about as you're starting out on your journey is your network. And your network is internal, but also external. Think about the people who are starting out in their career journeys, client side. And we try to engage with some of the clients' organizations to connect the young professionals, and we try to connect them as well. Water authorities, Engineers Australia, ACLCA, there's loads of different organizations. Invest in those as well. That's really important. And when it comes to the programs, what have the students enjoyed and what kind of feedback do they have? Look, the last couple of years have been tough, right? I mean, people have left college and started out from their bedrooms, you know, and people have been dialing on remotely, and I feel tremendously sad about that. I started 1.5 years ago in my daughter's bedroom. She kicked me out, and then I had to put a standing desk in the garden shed, and I've been in the garden shed 3 days a week for 2.5 years in Melbourne. The heating and cooling is a problem in summer and winter, but I'm getting there. So we're really keen now to make sure that we bring everybody together physically. So some of the feedback has been around connectivity that's been there through COVID, which a lot of it has been outside of our control. We offer a work from home package of about, I think, $1,100, and that would just include a really good office chair, first of all, you know, keyboard and mouse and a really good monitor to get everybody kind of well set up at home, as well as your laptop as well. I'll go through the chat and then I'll go through the raised hands. Oh, thanks for the great feedback. We really appreciate that. How many interviewers are going to be in the experience session? I'm super sorry that I can't answer that question. So that might be a logistics one, but I'll try to get Georgina maybe back into the chat. Thanks for the thanks as well. Okay, so Eloise, I think you might have been first with your hand up, and if you weren't, I apologize, but you're on the screen in front of me, so you go. I can't hear Eloise.
Is that any better?
Oh, that's perfect.
Sorry about that. Hi, my name's Eloise, and thank you so much, David, for taking the time to chat with us. I guess my question would be, is there any capacity for international rotations in that 6-month period?
At the minute, limited, I would say, Eloise, and I don't want to tell you an answer that could get your hopes up and then you come in and find out that it isn't factually correct. So at the minute, that's limited. We had a relocation program going pre-COVID, and COVID turned it on its head, so to speak. So we're really having a good look at what the relocation might be. Don't forget as well that we're in a bit of a skills shortage, and so it's tricky because different geographies have different needs. But at the minute, limited, and I hate to give a underwhelming answer, but I'd be better off to give a factually correct one. And
awesome. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Pleasure. Okay, I'm going to go down through Joshua. I think you had your hand up. Are you there, Joshua?
Can you hear me now, David?
Oh, I can, Joshua. Yeah, go ahead.
Just want a quick thanks to both you and Georgina. But I've just got a real quick question, because you mentioned you were at Jacobs at the start, and I wanted to ask, like, what were the the big differences or the reasons you wanted to change and go into Arcadis?
One of the, like all of the organizations that I've worked for have been fantastic. I've met some blisteringly smart people and I've made some wonderful friends in all of them. I think for me, I wanted to shift scale. I wanted to go to a business that was a little bit smaller, and I wanted to go to a business maybe a little less corporate North American, and I don't mean to offend any North Americans on the call whatsoever, because they've been massively successful. But I'd kicked around with North American headquartered businesses for a very long time, and so I probably wanted a shift in scale, maybe a slightly different vision and value, and then maybe a slightly different headquartered feel, if that makes sense. Kind of tactile reasons. There was nothing really definitive, like I hated the letter J or anything. It was all just kind of touchy-feely stuff, so to speak.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.
Pleasure. Gavin. You there, Gavin? No. Is this your one opportunity, Gavin? No, I'm joking. You'll have loads of opportunities. Okay, let me just dip back into the chat here. Oh, okay. So the microphone option, you can type it if you want, Gavin. Okay, I'm just going to go down through the chat really quickly as well to make sure that I haven't missed anything. I don't think I have. Okay, there is the question about how many interviews. Look, 2 or 3. I'm going to wing it. I'm going to wing an answer there. I may not have all the data, but I'd say 2 or 3 sounds like a good number. Final interview is 1-to-1. I don't think that the final interview would be 1-to-1. I'd say that there'd be 2 people present at almost all the interviews. Who can you expect to meet in the interview panel? I think that there's some former young professionals, and then there's some team leaders, and there might be a few senior technical people. Relax, be your honest, open, transparent selves. Make sure to let a bit of personality out, because we hire people who have skills. We don't hire skills who are hosted by people. So there'd be my tips there. Geez, there's some very good tips, actually. I should write those ones down. Would graduates work with supervisors and projects at all times? Will they be given their own projects to work on? Mix of both, Gavin, I would say. Mix of both. We want you to fend for yourselves. We want you to be assertive and energized and to take on responsibilities yourselves, but we don't want you to go too far outside of your comfort zone. So we want you to feel comfortable that you come back, check in, maybe recalibrate, maybe change direction, go back again, and then deliver. So a mix of both, but it won't be micromanagement, and you won't feel like we're in parenthood roles sitting over you all the time, because fundamentally that isn't how consultancy operates. So good mix of both, but you'll always have people close by to check in on, to provide technical calibration on, and go back to my comment about learning the craft of consulting. You'll always have people to teach you the craft as well. Okay, let me just check hands again. So Eloise, we've answered your question. I think Gavin, we've answered your question, and I'm gone a bit over time, and I'll do one more check of the chat. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna have to bail. Thank you so much for joining the call. Lovely to see so many faces on the call. The very, very, very best of good luck to you all. Looking forward to meeting you. And yeah, just don't let any imposter syndrome creep in. Goodness me, this is the exact point when you shouldn't have any of it. Be confident that you've done well through your academic process and time, and be confident in your abilities. Let a bit of personality out so we get to know you as a person. Don't be nervous about those interviews. You'll all do absolutely fine. So thank you so much, folks. Happy Friday. Have a lovely weekend, and the very, very best of good luck to you all.
Thanks, David.
See ya. Thank you. Bye.
Ah.